OKC, Denver, the Lakers, Houston, Minnesota, Oklahoma City, the Lakers, and Warriors back to back. That's as tough as you will ever see a stretch of games be in the NBA.
Legs, thank you so much for joining PHNX Suns here. The last time that we had you on, the Suns were riding high, and we asked you, is this real? You said, well, check in with me after they've played this tough upcoming schedule. Well, they have gone through some of that tough upcoming schedule. What's been your takeaway for the Suns now as we approach Christmas time in the NBA?
Well, not much has changed in terms of how impressed I've been with their season and how hard they play, and I guess how much better the product is for me as an analyst to watch this team. So that hasn't really changed. Look, this is Murderer's Row schedule. I don't know that you're going to find too many teams in the entire league all year that are going to go through a stretch like this. I mean, you're talking OKC, Denver, the Lakers, Houston, Minnesota, Oklahoma City, the Lakers, and Warriors back to back. That's as tough as you will ever see a stretch of games be in the NBA. You're talking about the top three contending teams in the Western Conference, who, by the way, I've on record as saying whoever wins the West is winning the title. Now, we all expect it to be Oklahoma City, but my point is I think the next two teams most likely to win a championship are also in the Western Conference. And they just played all those teams. In addition to Minnesota's been to the conference finals 2 years in a row, and they're playing great. The Golden State Warriors are always just a tough team to play against. And then, of course, the Lakers, who are top four in the Western Conference twice. So you don't get much tougher than that. And they had three of those games. They had either a lead or one possession deficit inside of 3 minutes. Really winnable games, and they weren't able to make the plays they needed to down the stretch against really good teams, or you'd feel a lot differently. Even if two of those three went their way, you feel a lot differently maybe than you looking at this as like, oh, they've lost now, 7 out of 10. It feels different. But if you really dive into it, they're a couple of possessions away from being 5-5 in that stretch. And it's as tough a stretch as they're going to play all season. So I haven't changed my opinion very much and how impressed I've been with them overall.
Yeah, we're about a third of the way through the season, and you talked about how hard this team plays. And you've also mentioned some of the buy-in from Jordan Knott. His first year as a head coach, about a third of the way through the year. What have you been most impressed outside of those things with him and what he's gotten out of this team?
I think the biggest thing for me is how understanding how difficult it is to reverse culture. And we use that word all the time. And what does it really mean? It really means creating an environment where your approach from the time you wake up in the morning as a player to the time you get in your car, drive to the facility, whether it's practice or a game, your approach and professional seriousness about which you're going to, conduct your business. It's not easy to reverse that. And I feel like they have. It looks that way to me. Now, look, I'm not there every day. I'm sure there's stuff that goes down you don't see. It does with every team, but it just looks so much healthier. It looks like these are a bunch of guys pulling in the same direction. There are no individual agendas on this. And that's not an easy thing to do. And I start with the coaching. The coaches create that. Now, if you've got veteran guys that can help set the tone as well, and it just so happens they're better players, then it's easy. Then it's really easy because then the locker room is going to police itself and those guys are going to be in charge of it. This is tough because they completely changed their approach to like building a team of what they did for like 3 years. This is totally different. That's not an easy thing to pull off, and he's done it. I give him a lot of credit to the point where I just did another show. We were talking about the major awards and kind of ranking like how we see it going right now. And I had Jordan Knott in my top 5 for Coach of the Year. I think he deserves to be in that category.
And I think, like Gil mentioned, we've seen that buy-in, and it's so apparent when you watch them play. But obviously, from an X's and O's perspective, this is also a team that looks vastly different than the last couple of years, even though they have a less veteran roster. What has it been about the approach to the game as far as the actual basketball that has also helped Jordan not be in that top 5 Coach of the Year standings for you?
I think, and part of it is personnel related. I mean, you had a team, you had certain guys that played a certain way offensively. It was more of an isolation-based team, more of a team that was like that. It felt more possessions were my turn, your turn type of basketball. Very difficult to win in this league playing that way for sustained stretches. This feels more like the secondary actions are there, and it's with intent. That's happening. Off of the initial action, there's a collapse, there's a breakdown, but it's what you're getting next, the next level. The ball changes sides of the floor. Like what happens on that side of the floor? It's more inclusive offensively. And as a result, more guys are having more fun playing offense than they did in the past. So that to me is what stands out. Like the stuff they run initially is not predictable because it leads to something better on the secondary reversal. And now the spacing is so good that now everybody kind of understands, and when it's your turn, it's going to come your way. And that just builds trust, and it makes it more fun for everybody. And there's a more of a bounce to your team and an energy when everybody feels included in what's going on. And that's what it feels like more to me than it did in the past, when it was just like a series of difficult shot making that took place with this team the last few years. And like, you're impressed by it. Oh, these guys are great offensive players. But like one tough shot after another, it's just like that's just not what winning basketball is supposed to look like. It's more like the way they're playing now.
Yeah, there's a lot to be encouraged by and excited by, especially with a team like this that is ahead of schedule in a lot of ways or exceeding expectations. But outside of the positives so far, are there any glaring weaknesses that you've seen with this team that they could actually improve upon to be better as the season kind of goes on to the second half of the year?
Well, look, I think some of that eventually is going to, I think, be answered with Jalen Green. Like, I mean, you think about these guys played 2 games, and this is one of the more explosive, like, players in this league with the ball in their hands. Now, look, he's got some other things. He's got some things that he needs to clean up too. Like turns the ball over a little bit too much. His efficiency and shot selection at times can be questioned, but he's such a dynamic talent. They haven't even incorporated that, like a little bit more pop from guys with the ball. That to me is what I think they could add. It's a little bit more juice and electricity with guys that have the ball in their hands, because you're certainly going to get that out of Devin Booker. You're not going to get that much out of anybody else on the roster. Jalen Green's going to provide some of that when he comes back.
With Jalen Green coming back, we've seen so many players step up in their role, but have to kind of go up a rung, right? You think about Colin Gillespie, who feels like a supercharged 6-man. He's starting. Royce O'Neal, he's starting. We've seen Grayson Allen have to be a primary initiator and creator. Is it reasonable to think that when Jalen Green gets inserted back into this lineup, we could actually see a better version of some of these players that have already exceeded expectations?
Well, I do, because you're going to be taking some stuff off of their plate that they've been asked to serve up. And that's tough when you put the ball in guys' hands who are better off the ball because of necessity and lack of depth with ball handling. You're asking guys to get a little bit out of their comfort zone. Now, look, it helps them grow because you get more opportunity to do it, but it's not necessarily serving the team in its best interest when those guys are better off the ball players as slashers or spot up shooters or whatever it may be. So now you add another guy to the mix that can create offense by breaking down and collapsing defenses and forcing rotations because they're getting downhill at the top of the key off a ball screen. And now it forces a collapse. It forces a rotation, which makes the next kick out and the shot easier for guys like Grayson Allen and Colin Gillespie and Dylan Brooks and Royce O'Neal, and the guys that are kind of waiting on shots don't have to do as much offense creation. It absolutely is going to be something that's going to make the game a little bit easier for those guys who have grown during this time with added responsibility. But once they get back into the lane they're more comfortable with, then this team will reach its maximum potential.
You talk about how it makes the game easier, right? But also is an adjustment having a guy like Jalen Green who needs the ball in his hands and has a lot of usage. And also you talk about some of his strengths and weaknesses and what comes with him. When this team gets back to full strength, we've been talking about that for a while. Do you see it more sustainable that the offense takes a leap or the defense maybe drops off? Or which part of it do you think is I guess, most at stake when the team gets back to full strength?
I wouldn't be surprised, honestly, if you're a Suns fan or you're watching this team and you're breaking this team down for a living. I wouldn't be surprised if there was going to be a little bit of some growing pains with the transition to add him, a high usage player, a player that has really known nothing but like kind of like green light, like do what you want to do offensively. It's a little bit different situation here now with who he's playing with. So to add a guy like that back to the mix, it will upset the natural order of what they've already known to this point in the season. That's an adjustment period. Now, fortunately, and it's not like there's ever really any easy stretch in the NBA, but it's not the stretch they just played. So there's going to be a little bit more opportunity, I think, to still be able to win while you're going through this adjustment period of having him incorporated. And that's important because it's demoralizing to lose games in the NBA. and you're adding him to the mix, and you can always chalk it up as an excuse. Oh, well, we're still working things out with Jalen Green, but it's a lot easier to maintain your positivity when you're winning some of those games while he's finding a way to be efficient, finding his rhythm, finding his lungs. His minutes are going to change, over the first 4 or 5 games. It's going to steadily increase. It's in a massive adjustment period to add a guy to the mix with this kind of scoring ability that's got the ball a lot. And if you could win some games while you're ironing that out, then this team could really have a really, really good second half of the year. And they've already, to me, surpassed what I expected from them this year. But now they've got to do it when he comes back. That's the next challenge. And it's not going to be easy, and it's not going to be seamless. So just be prepared for that and be patient with it, because it does take time.
I think the most interesting thing about this team being ahead of schedule and surpassing expectations is that this isn't a team that was trying to tank, and it's not a team that controls their own draft pick, which means they might be buyers at the trade deadline after all of this. I don't think they're going big fish hunting, but are there any other names or maybe profiles of players that you think the Suns should target come trade deadline time?
You look around the league, and this is a tough one this time of year because you just don't even know. So much of it's hypothetical. You could drop names, and it turns out that those players will never be available. So it's almost like, to me, it's almost like a moot conversation. But you look at a guy like Jonathan Kuminga, you look at a guy like Sabonis. There's a lot of talk around Sabonis. I don't know what it would take to get him. And so what are you willing to part with? Grayson Allen's a name that comes up all the time. Royce O'Neal's name comes up all the time. If you're going to move pieces, those are the likely guys. I don't know what it's going to take to get those deals done, but there are players in certain situations, whether because you're moving on in a different style, the team is underachieved, and now they're going to move on from a star player like a Sabonis. Or in the case of Kuminga, this guy's been on a 5-year audition in Golden State. I've never seen a guy have to audition more than Jonathan Kuminga has. Is a guy like that's clearly available. If you can bring a guy in and that can help your team when you want to play in the open floor, he can play some 4 for you. And if you want to play a smaller lineup, he's got a bigger body. He's athletic in the open floor. You want to play a certain style, and Golden State's kind of had it with him. You kind of explore that kind of thing and just think maybe this opportunity would be something you can get the most out of him. So those would be a couple of names just off the top of my head that I know potentially there's some talk around being available. Certainly Kuminga will be.
Yeah, you said it's a moot point, I guess, at this point to talk about specific names. I know you mentioned Kuminga and Sabonis, but is it an archetype of a player that you see as a void with this team? I know we've talked a lot about front court depth. We've also talked about shooting. Are one of those two things that kind of step up or stand out with this Suns team?
I would say both of those, and I already said one of them. I definitely think another dynamic player with the ball to create action off of a ball screen or an ISO. That's Jalen Green's going to answer that. Because it's a higher level than anybody on the roster, with the exception of Booker. So he immediately jumps up to the top of the food chain in that regard. So that's certainly something. Every team can always use more shooting, more consistent shooting, I think would be important, particularly with Jalen Green on the floor and his ability to get to the line and get downhill. That those weak side shots, higher efficiency there is something that's important. And yes, you guys could use some front court depth as well. So any of those areas, man, this is a team, I think, that's gotten here a little faster than we thought after basically thinking you're going to be rebuilding in a lot of ways after the Durant, Beal, Booker experiment kind of didn't go the way you wanted it to. Now you're moving on a different direction. They've gotten here faster than you thought. To be over 500, a third of the way through the season, I don't think a lot of people had them being here. So that's the good news. They're in a good spot. Now, yes, it's plug holes. And I think you can add in any of the 3 ways that I just mentioned.
And we're grateful for the Suns being better than expected. And we're grateful for you, Tim, taking time out of your busy schedule to chop it up and talk about our Phoenix Suns. Of course, you're part of the All NBA podcast with Adam Morris. You're on the All City Network, which, by my money, the best national NBA podcast out there. Just awesome stuff that you guys are doing over there, actually talking about the game and growing the game. And, of course, all your fantastic work over on ESPN with your coaches' breakdowns, the broadcasts, and everything in between. We appreciate you helping change the narrative when it comes to basketball media and how we all consume basketball media. So thank you so much for that. And of course, if you want to follow more Legs, check out the All NBA podcast or just turn on your TV. He's probably there. He actually might be there right now. Who knows? Thank you so much, Legs.
Appreciate you guys. Thanks for having me.